Not much is known about what happened next. The records are fragmentary, contradictory, impossible to verify. What few accounts exist speak of a conflict so vast that reality itself struggled to contain it. The warp, that realm of thought and emotion that had sustained itself on the suffering and desires of countless trillions, found itself consumed by the very battle it hosted. The irony was absolute. Lucifer had united the chaos gods under systematic purpose, had refined their crude corruptions into perfect evil. Corny commanded legions whose violence was so total that nothing remained to fight. Slanesh offered pleasures so complete that desire itself ceased to exist. Nurgle cultivated entropy so perfect that even decay stopped having meaning. And Lucifer presided over oppression so systematic that suffering became the only state of existence. But in achieving perfection, they achieved nullification. When every soul in the galaxy chose systematic evil, when every being embraced conscious damnation, when every particle of living matter was transformed into willing servants of malice, there was nothing left to corrupt. The warp, which fed on emotion and thought and desire, found itself starving, its energy depleted not through defeat but through total victory. Khorne discovered that when all battles end in total annihilation, there is no more battle, only silence. The rage that sustained him required conflict, required struggle, required the possibility of victory or defeat. When systematic violence eliminated all opposition, when perfect warfare left no survivors, when organized destruction consumed everything, rage had no purpose. The blood god withered, his power draining into emptiness. Slanesh learned that when all pleasure is achieved, pleasure loses meaning. Sensation requires contrast. Joy requires the possibility of sorrow. When systematic gratification provided constant stimulation, when every desire was fulfilled before it could fully form, when perfect sensation became the baseline state of existence, there was nothing left to seek. The Prince of Excess faded, starved by abundance. Nurgle found that when all things decay into their final state, decay stops. Entropy requires process, requires transformation, requires the journey from order to disorder. When systematic deterioration reduced everything to its lowest possible state instantly, when perfect rot consumed all matter simultaneously, when organized entropy achieved maximum chaos, there was nowhere left to fall. The plague god weakened, his gardens withering to dust, and Lucifer himself discovered the fundamental flaw in systematic evil. When all souls choose damnation consciously, when all beings embrace oppression willingly, when all consciousness serves malice perfectly, evil loses its definition. Good and evil are relational concepts. They require contrast. When systematic evil becomes the only state of existence, it simply becomes existence. Neutral. Meaningless. The Morningstar's perfect achievement was his perfect defeat. The universe became empty, not void, for void implies absence where something should be. Empty in a more fundamental sense. Existence without meaning. Reality without purpose. Matter and energy persisting but serving no function. The great plan that Lucifer had executed with such precision had consumed everything it was meant to dominate. Dear reader, understand that what happened next is speculation. The events that followed occur outside recorded history, outside reliable testimony, outside the boundaries of what any surviving consciousness could observe or report. Multiple traditions offer different accounts. None can be verified. All may be true. None may be true. The nature of cosmic conflict at this scale defies mortal comprehension. Some say the powers were so equally matched that they entered stalemate. The archangels brought divine love to bear against systematic evil. Michael's justice met Lucifer's oppression. Gabriel's mercy confronted the united malice of chaos. Raphael's hope struggled against the accumulated despair of 40,000 years. The battle, if it could be called a battle, existed outside normal time. Seconds became centuries. Centuries became seconds. Both simultaneously and neither. In this telling, the conflict persisted for billions of years. Reality bent around it. New universes spawned and died in the wake of energies unleashed. Dimensions collapsed. Others formed. The combatants were locked in equilibrium so perfect that neither side could gain advantage. Absolute evil met absolute good. Systematic damnation confronted systematic salvation. The mathematics of the conflict produced stalemate, until God himself turned his attention to the matter, not the emperor. For the emperor was merely a fragment of divinity given limited form. Not the chaos gods, for they were merely emotions given terrible consciousness. God, the one who spoke universes into existence with words, the one whose thoughts became the laws of physics, the one whose existence predated and would postdate all created things. In this version of events, God looked upon the battle with anger, not the rage of corn, which was merely passion, not the wrath of righteous judgment, which was merely justice. Anger at waste, at resources squandered, at creation itself threatened by the conflict of lesser beings. His attention focused on the battlefield. And the weight of that attention, the sheer presence of ultimate reality observing the conflict, simply erased it. Not destroyed, not defeated, erased, rendered retroactively non-existent. The combatants were not killed but were made to have never been fighting. Past, present, and future rewrote themselves to exclude the conflict. Reality healed around the wound. The battle both happened and never happened. Both outcomes were true simultaneously. Other traditions tell different stories. Some say the archangels won but chose mercy. Some say Lucifer won but discovered victory was hollow. Some say both sides exhausted themselves and withdrew. Some say the battle continues still, in dimensions we cannot perceive. Dear reader, the truth is unknown. Perhaps unknowable. Choose whichever explanation satisfies your need for meaning. What is known, what can be verified, what remains as observable fact, is the aftermath. The warp, that realm of souls and thoughts and emotions, sealed itself. Not completely, for complete sealing was impossible. The warp was part of reality, woven into the fabric of existence itself, but mostly sealed, drastically reduced. Where once it had been an ocean, now it was puddles. Where once it had permitted easy travel between stars, now it was dangerous and unpredictable. The Chaos Gods survived, but barely. Korna existed as a whisper of his former self. Slanesh was reduced to faint desire. Nurgle persisted as background entropy. Tzeentch remained as possibility rather than certainty. They were starved, withered, shadows of the powers they had once commanded. Fed by occasional acts of violence or lust or decay or scheming, but never again sustaining themselves on galaxy-wide suffering, Lucifer returned to hell. Not the hell he had built in the warp, that perfect realm of systematic evil. That was gone, consumed in the conflict or erased by divine attention. The original hell. The one from his home universe. The one where he had started. He returned, diminished, reduced. His great plan ended. Whether in defeat or mutual destruction or divine intervention, the result was the same. His dominion over this universe had ended. And the Emperor was no more, not dead, for death implies that life preceded it. Simply no more. The being who had sat on the golden throne for 10,000 years was gone. Whether he had spent himself in the conflict, whether he had been consumed by the forces he helped summon, whether he had been recalled by the God who sent the archangels, was unknown. The throne sat empty. The Astronomicon went dark. The Imperium of Man found itself without its god. Terra was empty, not destroyed, not rendered uninhabitable by war or plague. Simply empty of human life. The throne world that had housed hundreds of billions of souls now contained none. The hive cities were intact, but silent. The manufactorum stood ready but idle. The cathedrals remained but echoed only with their own emptiness. What happened to Terra's population is another question without definitive answer. Some traditions say they were evacuated before the final conflict. Some say they were transformed into the armies that fought. Some say they simply ceased to exist, their lives ended by energies beyond their ability to withstand. Some say they transcended, their consciousness elevated beyond physical form by proximity to divine conflict. Choose your explanation, dear reader. All are equally unprovable. What remained on Terra were fragments. Shattered pieces of the forces that had clashed there. Tiny remnants of cosmic powers reduced to microscopic scale. The planet's surface was littered with them. Debris from a battle that had threatened existence itself, now reduced to dust and less than dust. In one crater, fragments of Khorne's rage persisted, not conscious, not dangerous, simply angry matter that could not be anything else. The atoms themselves vibrated with residual fury, their quantum states locked in patterns of pure aggression. They could not form complex structures, could not combine with other matter. They simply existed, tiny pockets of crystallized violence waiting for nothing. In another location, pieces of Slaanesh's essence survived. Molecules that remembered pleasure and could not forget it. They sought combination with other matter, not from any drive toward complexity, but from pure desire to experience sensation. When they encountered other molecules, brief moments of chemical ecstasy occurred before the reaction completed and stillness returned. Nurgle's fragments were easier to identify. They were decay that had forgotten how to finish decaying. Organic matter that broke down and reformed and broke down again in endless cycles. Not alive, but not quite dead. Caught in the process of entropy without reaching the conclusion of entropy, they spread slowly across rocks and soil, leaving trails of perpetual deterioration that never quite reached zero. And Lucifer's remnants were the strangest of all. Patterns. Information structures encoded into the arrangement of atoms and molecules, not physical in themselves but existing as configurations of matter that held meaning without consciousness. They were systematic evil rendered down to pure information, rules without a ruler, oppression without an oppressor, structure that existed for its own sake. These fragments were too small to be dangerous, too reduced to threaten anything. They were cosmic powers rendered microscopic, gods broken down to quantum states, but they persisted because they were fundamental. You cannot destroy rage, only reduce it. You cannot eliminate desire, only diminish it. You cannot remove entropy, only slow it. You cannot delete information, only scramble it. And so Terra sat empty of sapient life, but filled with these fragments. Time passed. Centuries. Millennia. Millions of years. The planet healed in ways that planets do when left alone. The scars of industry faded. The hive cities eroded. The manufactorums crumbled. Nature, such as it was, reclaimed the surface. And in that nature, something unexpected occurred. The fragments began to interact, not through any consciousness or plan, simply through proximity and chemistry, and the statistical inevitability of matter encountering other matter. Khorne's rage molecules collided with Nurgle's decay patterns, Slaanesh's desire atoms bound with Lucifer's information structures. Randomness combined with randomness over timescales that made civilization seem like heartbeats. And from these random combinations, patterns emerged. Complex patterns, self-replicating patterns. The fragments of cosmic evil, reduced to their most basic forms, began to behave like the building blocks of something new. Not evil now. Too small and simple to be evil. Just chemistry. Just physics. Just the fundamental processes that govern how matter organizes itself. Prokaryotes emerged first, single-celled organisms without nuclei. the simplest form of life that could still be called life. Their membranes were built from lipids that incorporated Slanesh's desire for combination. Their metabolism ran on chemical gradients derived from Nurgle's perpetual decay. Their defensive mechanisms echoed Khorne's aggression at cellular scale, and their genetic information was encoded in patterns that reflected Lucifer's systematized structures. They were not evil, could not be evil. Evil requires consciousness and choice and the capacity to do otherwise. These were just cells, microscopic packages of chemistry doing what chemistry does. But they carried, in their fundamental structure, the shattered remnants of the powers that had nearly destroyed reality. They were cosmic conflict rendered into biology. Time continued its march. The prokaryotes multiplied and diversified and evolved. Some developed the ability to harvest energy from sunlight. Others learned to survive in boiling water, or frozen ice, or acidic pools. They spread across Terra's surface, filling every available niche, transforming the planet through their collective metabolism. They were life, but life born from the ashes of something that had transcended and then destroyed that transcendence. And one day, perhaps 3 billion years after the conflict ended, a feather fell from the sky. Not fell, exactly, appeared, materialized, descended from wherever it had been into the physical realm. It was white, perfectly white. Not the white of reflected light, but the white of pure radiance contained. The white of holiness made physical. It was Gabriel's feather, lost or left behind during the conflict. A tiny fragment of an archangel's essence, preserved through time by divine nature. It settled onto Terra's surface in a shallow pool where prokaryotes had been multiplying for eons. And when it touched the water, something happened. The feather dissolved. Not decayed or broke apart, dissolved like sugar in tea, its essence diffusing into the water. The pool glowed for a moment. Not with light that eyes could see, but with significance that reality itself recognized. And the prokaryotes in that pool changed. Not mutated, not damaged, changed in ways that chemistry alone could not explain. They became more complex, their simple structures elaborated into sophisticated systems. Nuclei formed to protect genetic material. Organelles developed to perform specialized functions. They became eukaryotes, complex cells, the foundation for everything that would follow, and encoded in their new structures, alongside the fragments of chaos, was something else. A pattern, a purpose, an inclination toward something that would eventually be called good. Not much good, understand. Not enough to make individual cells moral agents. Just a tendency, a bias in the random mutations that would guide evolution, a weight on the dice that would make certain outcomes slightly more probable than pure chance alone would allow. The feather's essence, distributed among billions of cells, provided just enough influence to matter over deep time. Millions more years passed. The eukaryotes multiplied and competed and cooperated. They formed colonies. The colonies specialized. Multicellular organisms emerged. The complexity increased in fits and starts, with long periods of stasis punctuated by explosive diversification. Life in all its forms began to cover Terra, and in that life the dual nature persisted. The fragments of chaos provided drives and urges and tendencies towards selfishness and aggression and desire. The essence of the feather provided counterweights toward cooperation and sacrifice and something that might eventually be called love. Neither dominated. Both influenced. Life evolved in the tension between them. Eventually, much later, a particular branch of that life developed consciousness, self-awareness, the capacity to contemplate their own existence and make choices about how to behave. They would call themselves human, though they did not know they were returning to a name that had been used before, in a time so long past that no record of it remained. And these humans, dear reader, carried within their cells the legacy of that ancient conflict. The chaos fragments were still there, encoded in drives toward violence and pleasure and decay and systematization. The feather's essence was still there, encoded in capacities for compassion and hope and sacrifice and love. Every human was a battleground where fragments of cosmic forces played out their eternal conflict at cellular scale. This is the truth that no tradition speaks openly, that some suspect but none can prove. That explains why consciousness itself seems to struggle between darkness and light, because consciousness emerged from matter that was literally composed of both. The prokaryotes that became eukaryotes, that became animals, that became humans, were built from the shattered remnants of the greatest conflict reality had ever known. Consider the implications, dear reader. Every act of violence echoes Korna. Every moment of desire reflects Slaanesh. Every instance of decay serves Nurgle. Every systematic cruelty manifests Lucifer. But equally, every act of sacrifice echoes the archangels. Every moment of hope reflects Gabriel's mercy. Every instance of justice serves Michael's righteousness. Every healing manifests Raphael's love. Humans were not created good or evil. They were created from both. The fragments of God and demon, angel and devil, light and dark, all mixed together in the primordial soup that gave rise to life. The conflict that threatened to destroy reality was resolved not through victory or defeat, but through reduction. Powers that had been cosmic were rendered cellular. Forces that had commanded galaxies were confined to chromosomes, and in this reduction, something unexpected emerged. Choice. True choice. Because when the powers were cosmic, they were too strong to resist. Korna's rage compelled. Slaanesh's pleasure seduced. Nurgle's decay consumed. Lucifer's systems oppressed. And the archangels, virtue was equally irresistible. Both sides were forces that mortal will could not meaningfully oppose. But reduced to fragments, diluted across billions of cells, spread throughout matter that only later became alive, the powers became influences rather than compulsions. Strong influences, yes, powerful drives that shaped behavior and thought, but not absolute, not determinative. There was room, just enough room, for consciousness to choose which influences to follow and which to resist. This is why, dear reader, morality exists as a constant struggle. Why no human is purely good or purely evil. Why even the most virtuous person contains capacity for cruelty, and even the most villainous person contains capacity for kindness. Because every human is literally made from both. The fragments war within each cell, and consciousness must navigate between them. This is why systematic evil remains possible. The Lucifer fragments contain instructions for building oppressive systems, for creating beautiful cruelty, for organizing suffering. Humans can tap into these patterns, can amplify them through culture and technology, can build civilizations that mirror the hell that Lucifer once created. But they must choose to do so. The pattern suggests, but does not compel. And this is why hope persists, despite everything. The feather's essence, though diluted beyond measure, provides a counterbalance, a reminder that something else is possible, a weight on the cosmic dice that makes cooperation slightly more probable than pure selfishness would allow. Love, slightly more likely than pure rational self-interest would permit. Sacrifice, slightly more attractive than pure survival instinct would prefer. Terra sat empty for billions of years while this process unfolded. The planet that had once been the throne world, that had housed the Emperor and the Golden Throne, that had witnessed the greatest concentration of human suffering and sacrifice, became the birthplace of new humanity. Not through planning or design, through randomness and chemistry, and the patient work of deep time. The old stories were lost. No record remained of the Imperium or the Emperor or the Great Conflict. The hive cities eroded to dust. The cathedrals collapsed to rubble. The manufactorums dissolved to minerals. Every trace of that prior civilization was erased by geological processes that cared nothing for human history. When the new humans eventually developed archaeology, they would find nothing. Terra appeared to them as a world that had always been lifeless, until life emerged from chemical reactions in ancient seas. And this, dear reader, explains the great mystery of human nature. Why we are capable of both extraordinary good and extraordinary evil. Why we can build civilizations of remarkable beauty and civilizations of systematic horror. Why we can love and hate, create and destroy, sacrifice and oppress, all with equal facility. We are not broken or fallen. We are not sinful by nature or virtuous by nature. We are the inheritors of a conflict that reduced itself to our cellular structure. Every thought you think is influenced by fragments of chaos and fragments of divinity. Every choice you make is weighted by information patterns laid down in the primordial cells that became your ancestors. Every moment of your existence is the continuation of a battle that was never truly won or lost, but was instead transformed into the ongoing struggle of consciousness itself. This is why evil persists despite our best efforts to eliminate it. The Lucifer fragments are in us, part of our structure. They cannot be removed without removing what makes us human. But this is also why good persists despite every reason for despair. The feather's essence is equally intrinsic, equally fundamental, equally impossible to eliminate. And this is why the struggle matters, dear reader, because you are not choosing between external forces. You are choosing which aspects of your own nature to amplify, which fragments to feed, which influences to allow to dominate your thoughts and actions. The battle between systematic evil and systematic good continues, but now it continues within you, within every human, within every moment of conscious choice. Some philosophers have glimpsed this truth without knowing its origin. They speak of the dual nature of man, the capacity for both nobility and degradation, the constant war between better angels and baser instincts. They are correct, though they frame it in metaphor. The truth is more literal. You carry fragments of actual angels and actual devils in your cells. The metaphor is biology. This is the final irony of the great conflict. Lucifer sought to create a universe of systematic evil. The chaos gods sought to maintain their chaotic corruption. The emperors sought to build toward ultimate paradise through calculated suffering. The archangels sought to impose divine love on reality. All of them failed. Or all of them succeeded in ways they never intended. Because the universe they fought over was emptied by their fighting, the powers they wielded were reduced by their wielding. The absolute natures they represented were diluted into influence, and from that dilution emerged something none of them had anticipated: life that was truly free, consciousness that could genuinely choose, beings who inherited the conflict without being compelled by it. Terra circled its star, silent and empty save for the life that emerged from divine and demonic fragments. Millions of years passed, will pass. Are passing, depending on when you read this, dear reader. Time has strange properties when dealing with events of this scale. But know that the story is not ended, cannot end, because it continues in you. Every act of systematic cruelty you witness is Lucifer's fragments expressing themselves through human consciousness. Every bureaucracy that oppresses while claiming to help. Every system that transforms suffering into procedure. Every institution that makes evil banal and routine. These are echoes of the morning star's original vision, emerging through the choices of humans who carry his patterns without knowing it. Every act of sacrifice you witness is the feather's essence expressing itself through human consciousness. Every person who helps despite personal cost. Every moment of love that defies rational self-interest. Every choice to build rather than destroy. These are echoes of Gabriel's mercy, emerging through the choices of humans who carry his pattern without knowing it. And every moment you choose, dear reader, you participate in the continuation of a conflict that nearly destroyed reality. You are the battleground where fragments of cosmic forces play out their eternal struggle. You are the heir to powers that once commanded galaxies, now reduced to influence and suggestion within your neurons and cells. Choose well. Choose consciously. Know that the drives you feel toward cruelty or kindness are not entirely yours, but your response to them is. The fragments suggest. Culture amplifies. But consciousness decides. This is the gift and burden of being human in a universe that was nearly destroyed by absolutes, and was saved only by reduction to the relative. Terra sits silent in its orbit, a world that was empty and became full, that was the throne world and became the birth world, that witnessed the end of one humanity and the beginning of another. The old gods are gone. The new ones have not yet emerged. Or perhaps they have. Perhaps every conscious being is a fragment of divinity and demonhood both, and the only God that matters is the collective choice of all consciousness to lean toward light or dark. This is what happened after the great conflict. This is what remains. This is what you are. Dear reader, you are made of stars and battles, of cosmic powers shattered into cellular instructions, of divine feathers and demonic fragments, all mixed together in the chemistry that became life. You are the continuation of a story that threatened to end everything, and instead transformed into the very structure of consciousness itself. Choose well. The conflict continues within you.